Hello and welcome to NewsHour from the World Service of the BBC, coming live from London. This is Owen Bennett-Jones. Well, Donald Trump was rushed to safety yesterday after shots were fired at a Washington hotel. He was attending a gala dinner when someone in the building fired a weapon. A Secret Service officer was shot at very close range but saved by his bulletproof vest. The event was the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's an annual affair for hundreds of diplomats and journalists who took cover under the tables as the music was stopped and then the guests told to hit the floor. Minutes later, the BBC's Catriona Perry, who was one of the guests at the dinner, spoke to us on her phone about what she'd seen.
We were seated here. We were finishing off the starter course. And the next thing, there was a kerfuffle of a sound of breaking glass and tables being knocked over right by the entrance to the room here. And a large law enforcement armed presence rushed straight to the president, rushed he and the First Lady off of the stage. Everyone was ordered to dive for cover, which we all did. There was a noise that sounded like shots. I cannot say that they were shots. I was speaking to an individual here who was outside of the bathroom, outside of the dining room at the time, and he said there were shots fired outside the dining room, so not inside the dining room.
And once he was whisked away, the president spoke to reporters.
And that was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons. And he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly.
Well, Washington, D.C.'s police chief, Jeffrey W. Carroll, gave an update on the injured officer and a 31-year-old suspect named as Cole Thomas Allen, who's been arrested.
An individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time.
And we can hear now from Oz Perlman. Now, he was one of the main speakers at the dinner last night. He's sometimes described as a mentalist. He's basically a magician who can, or at least give the impression of, reading others' minds. And if you see the video of the moment the attack happened, he was actually standing right by the president and the First Lady, between them, performing one of his tricks when all three of them reacted to a noise they heard.
I was right in the middle of performing for the president and the First Lady, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, and I heard a commotion in the middle of the room, and we heard it, but it was like right at the exact moment of my big reveal. So everyone's kind of smiling, but then it escalated. So at first there's that feeling of, is there somebody having a heart attack? Is there a medical issue? And then I saw instantly so many people swarming one specific location, and you knew it was something that was danger. It wasn't like, somebody was sick and somebody collapsed. I at first thought it was a bomb. I was, within a second, I'm looking because it didn't feel like somebody was shooting. I hadn't heard shooting, but you heard a loud noise and it seemed like they were rushing to stop someone from doing something. So I've seen the video and I remember it clearly, but I dropped almost as quick as anybody. I just said something's about to explode or something's about to go. So I was right behind the president and I ducked down.
Are you saying there was a direct line of sight between the shooter and the president?
No, not the shooter.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't see the shooter,
okay,
but you could see all of the Secret Service people coming in to one location. And we're higher up because we were on the dais, so we were elevated.
Yeah.
We were higher than everybody. We had a very good vantage point. Sorry, I lost my voice. And so I just went down. It seemed like something was about to happen. And given, history, I was hoping not to get shot. So I went down very quickly. And then Secret Service brought President Trump down, I would say very effectively, but quite violently. I'm hoping he's fully okay because I watched him go down really hard. So I was facing stage left. It just by chance, they tackled him right next to me facing stage right. So when we went down, I can't measure it, but about 1 foot apart from our faces. And I'm turned to the left, looking directly into his eyes for one Mississippi, two Mississippis, pretty much thinking, I hope I'm not about to die, but also simultaneously, based on looking at his face, I wasn't sure if he had been shot because it was so, I just didn't think they would do that like that if somebody hadn't shot. And you couldn't tell if he was injured or if the first lady or if anybody. At that point, I did hear what I thought were shots. So you just didn't know. You think like things move slower, but in that moment, looking at the president's eyes, both of us down, I still thought the room was going to explode.
And when you were down with the president, I mean, first of all, did he
I didn't talk to him.
No.
I didn't talk to him. I can't explain it. It's going to be seared in my mind forever because obviously the adrenaline, the president, you don't normally see the president on the ground and you're like literally face to face looking at each other during quite a, panicked moment. And then it was 2 beats and then they take him out. I'm next to Courtney and a few other people that are at the dais, and we're like looking at each other and we start army crawling out, but I don't want to get up because I don't know if they're still shooting. So we all like slowly didn't know what to do. I didn't want to move. And then we crawled out, if you see the video. And then I was really concerned about my wife because she's out in the audience, but thankfully her seats were very far from where I thought the shooting had happened from. And backstage, we did not know for minutes still if the president or the first lady was hit. We didn't know who was shot. We were told definitely there was shooting. We were told somebody was killed. We just didn't know for an extended period what was happening until we spoke to the vice president at a certain point. We saw Secret Service with guns everywhere. It was a crazy night. Like, I don't have any other way to put it. It was just insane.
Certainly was. And obviously, as you say, you were scared. What about the president? Did he look scared?
I thought the president might have been injured. So my first take on it was that it might have been from the fact that like 2 grown men hit him really hard. I wouldn't even want that done to me, but I think the safety was paramount. They must have done it in a way that was more effective than it looks. But, he went down really fast in what looked hard to me. So I couldn't really tell his disposition. I just was hoping he was okay.
I mean, you're not a security guy, but it seems incredible that the president and the vice president would be so close together, as revealed by this incident when someone with a gun got moderately close to them.
It's crazy. Right. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know how else to explain it. It was a terrifying night. I'm so happy everyone was okay, and that the story also. I've received a lot of people checking on how I am, followed by hundreds of messages of how did you not see this coming if you're so good? So I feel like I'm going to be haunted by that forever because the joke writes itself. But I am more of somebody who guesses what you're thinking and not what deranged people are thinking with guns.
Now then, I think the president has said that the event will be rearranged and it will...
I'm hoping.
Will you be there?
I will 100% be there. I think the story you would have been hearing tonight, had this awful event not happened, was about my performance because I had something spectacular planned. But it was not meant to be that night. But you know what? In the world of what's serious and what's not, entertainment takes a backstage to violence. And I know in this country there's a lot of division and across the world. But I think that something like this, it just lets you know that there's different ways to handle these types of problems. And this is absolutely not the way. And violence like this is just unacceptable.
And that was Oz Pearlman. Later in the programme, we'll be talking to a reporter in Los Angeles who's getting the latest news on Cole Thomas Allen. Spent a few hours outside his house overnight trying to work out what was going on. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC. And coming up a little later in the programme, Raghu Rai, India's greatest documentary photographer, has died at the age of 83.
If you look at the subjects that he covered, I mean, he essentially was an encyclopedia of contemporary Indian history. He photographed Mother Teresa, Indira Gandhi, her assassination and its aftermath, ordinary things, extraordinary things, and he was able to slip from one to the other with ease.
We have a tribute from the renowned Bangladeshi photographer and activist Shahidul Alam. That's in around 30 minutes' time. Just now, a headline: Mali's defence minister has been assassinated in a car bomb attack, part of a wave of jihadist and Tuareg separatist-led violence which is sweeping the country. Sebastian Sawe of Kenya won the London Marathon today. Only is the fourth time he's run the distance, but that's the least of it. He has become the first man in history to complete a marathon in under 2 hours, beating the fastest time by a minute. So he really trounced the former world record.
Sebastian Sawe is going to break the 2-hour mark. He's going to win the London Marathon in incredible style. An historic performance, 1:59.30. Absolutely incredible. I've never seen anything like that. What a finish.
Well, with such a massive leap from the last world record, there are bound to be questions about doping, but a testing regime designed and implemented by the Athletics Integrity Unit, that's the AIU, an independent body set up by World Athletics, has consistently found him drugs-free. Claudio Baradelli is Sebastian Sawe's coach. So, did he expect him to break this 2-hour barrier?
Maybe not really sub 2, but Sebastian was ready for a good one, definitely, and then perfect day, perfect conditions, and then something quite incredible came.
Previously, the record's been 30 seconds more than that. So, I mean, this really is a big change in the speed in which people are doing it. What's changed?
Well, I would say technology is definitely playing a huge role because we had an incredible shoe from Adidas, our main sponsor. What is also changing is the level of fueling, more carbs. The level of training, it has improved a lot in the years, and athletes, they have learned how to recover much better. And then, of course, I have to say the truth as coach of Sebastian Sawe. Sebastian is an exceptional athlete. I've been coaching in Kenya for 22 years and I thought I had seen pretty much everything, but Sebastian is showing me something which, honestly, I never thought to see.
And you know I'm going to ask you the next question because you've taken a lot of measures to try and get rid of this issue, but some of your athletes have been done for doping and you have tried to get a lot of tests on Sebastian Sawe to show he's not doing it. Presumably you're going to face that claim.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kenya is facing definitely a problem. And we had also, yes, in our group, some few cases. And then we thought it was time to do something because Sebastian and I knew that maybe a day like today could have come. And then we approached AIU and then we came up with this idea. And then, Sebastian is still continuing in having a very specific, intense anti-doping protocol. Yeah.
I mean, the idea is what, tests about every 3 days?
Yeah, that was initially what we did before Berlin last year. But then AIU came to us and he said, okay, you guys, you're still giving us a budget, but we think that every 3 days doesn't make much sense. It's too much. So still Sebastian, compared to any other athlete, is being tested much more.
He's getting many more tests than any other marathon runner. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So what next? I mean, presumably you're looking for more.
This one was only marathon number 4 for Sebastian, so in a sense, he's still quite a new marathon runner. So for what I've seen in training, I think we still have room, more space for improvement. And of course, now we have to go back and think what is next. Maybe Olympics are not too far away. And I'm sure we got interesting things ahead of us.
What is it about this part of Kenya that delivers these people?
From my opinion, is about definitely something to do with their physiology, but I think it's also very cultural. I think that, maybe running is like football in Brazil. I mean, kids, they start running at a very young age and more or less most of the people in Kenya, at least during their school time, they have tried to run. So you can imagine how many young kids they're approaching athletics, and then eventually you can find very good talents.
Now, it is 7 o'clock in the evening in London that we're talking, and your guy did this today, a few hours ago. I rather presume you're going out to some extremely good restaurant a little later on to look after him and congratulate him.
Well, the London Marathon is offering us a very good dinner tonight,
there
and
you
then
go.
I'm pretty sure Sebastian needs to go to bed. He's quite exhausted, I would say.
Dear me, straight to bed. Claudio Baradelli there, coach of Sebastian Saue. On the 26th of April 1986, an explosion at reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the Ukrainian city of Pripyat in what was then the Soviet Union constituted the world's worst ever nuclear accident.
The Soviet Union said today that an accident has damaged an atomic reactor at a power plant near Kiev. The admission came after complaints from Scandinavian countries of a dramatic increase in radioactivity.
The disaster led to the relocation of over 200,000 people, but still many were caught up in the fallout, with thousands of children, for example, suffering thyroid cancer. But still, people do visit Chernobyl. And Aliona Kildashova is a former tour guide there, now lives in the UK. I asked her first, isn't it just too dangerous to visit the site after the explosion?
It was really, really dangerous at the beginning, first 10 years. There had to be a lot of work done in order to take out as much consumption of radioactive parts as it was possible from the ground. So all the liquidators, they've done absolutely fantastic job. And only after that, Chernobyl was open for tours. But again, it was only the tours on a specific route, which were considered to be safe for the tourists, for the visitors. Obviously, there are still loads of extremely dangerous spots, which you're just not allowed to visit.
So as you got closer, presumably, to the site of the disaster, the radioactivity gets higher.
So there are two zones inside of Chernobyl zone. There is 30-kilometer zone, which is considered to be much safer than the 10-kilometer zone. So, for example, 30-kilometer zone is where the town of Chernobyl is situated, and the radiation level there is exactly the same as in Kiev. But as soon as you go to 10-kilometer zone, which is around the fourth reactor, obviously the radiation level is so high that there are no people who live there. There are no people who stay there. You're not allowed to eat there. So it's much more dangerous.
I see. And when you get into that 10-kilometre zone, I understand it's almost like a nature reserve because it's just been allowed to grow wild.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if we talk about the nature, because obviously after 40 years, a lot of trees grew up again. Beautiful forest, loads of wild animals. You know, we were able to spot fox, bear, wolves, even deers, which was absolutely fantastic.
It does prompt another question, which is why would people want to see this? I mean, it was a scene of a great disaster and many people died there.
Yes, that's a scene of a great, absolutely shocking disaster. But at the same time, I think that's history. I think that a lot of people wanted to see that place in order to understand more the history of the event and probably to make some conclusions and to try not to do the same mistake in future.
And in 2022, the Russians invaded Ukraine and they took over Chernobyl, but only briefly. The Ukrainians got it back. So tell us about that part of the story.
That part of the story was absolutely shocking, and it was shocking from the point of view that Russians didn't understand where they were. Feels like they were not told what is that radiation, how dangerous this place is. So they were digging the trenches in the Red Forest, one of the most dangerous places in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. After that, a lot of them were suffering with radioactive diseases, and they were evacuated to Belarus to get some health check. As well, they were just stealing everything they saw from Chernobyl exclusion zone, which is, again, extremely dangerous. You can't take anything from the zone. They were absolutely taking whatever they saw.
And today, I presume, no tourists going back with the war on, so it's just being left to itself, is it?
Yes, so right now, this is just territory for the workers of Chernobyl nuclear power plant or for Ukrainian militaries. One of the most dangerous things about Chernobyl zone right now is that Russians mined the whole zone, and it wouldn't be safe for tourists for, I don't know, the next 10, 20 years until all the mines will be taken away.
Former Chernobyl tour guide there, Aliona Kildashova. You are listening to NewsHour. Now let's just get up to date with what's coming out about the shooter in the White House correspondent dinner last night in Washington. One of our correspondents has been gathering up that information. Shaima Khalil, what have you got on Cole Thomas Allen?
The 31-year-old alleged gunman, Owen, is currently being held at a Metropolitan Police Department station in Northwest D.C. We understand from reporting by our partner CBS that he will be transported later today to a detention facility elsewhere in the capital. And we also know that he's going to be taken into federal court on Monday, tomorrow. And the charges that are expected to be leveled against him are assaulting a federal officer, discharging firearms, and attempting to kill a federal officer. Things have been trickling in, details have been trickling in throughout the day about the motive. I must say that police are still telling us that the motive is still being investigated, but the acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanchard has been speaking on all the main U.S. Sunday morning shows, and he said preliminary findings suggest that the suspect gunman was targeting members of the Trump administration. Mr. Trump himself was a likely target, but also a lot has been said about writings, bits of paper where he has written lines that have been described as anti-Trump, anti-Christian that were found in his room, but also similar lines that are being investigated on his social media profiles.
Oh, right. He has social media profiles, does he? Because, I mean, we haven't heard anything about that, and I was assuming we'd know about that in about 10 minutes, you know.
He does, and we did talk about that earlier in the day. It's interesting because we went from nothing to now police telling us that he's written all these statements that that are still being investigated on paper, but also on social media. What I found very interesting is that what has come out regarding social media and what has come out with the alleged suspect, albeit being still investigated, is almost like a double existence. One is what President Trump has described as strongly anti-Christian. He's called him a man with hate in his heart. He's called him sick. This is a man that was armed with a shotgun, with a handgun, with multiple knives, and he got very close to a room that had the president, the vice president, the first lady, senior cabinet members, right? But then you speak to a university professor that worked with him, and he called him a very decent person. He was always in the front row. He was a very good student. He's a graduate of Caltech. He has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. He was a teacher. And there is a great deal of shock among his neighbors that he would do such a thing. So that gap, I think, is one of the things that is being investigated. What led to that moment? But make no mistake, I think that at the heart of this is a security breach of how close he got to this room of high-profile people, some of the most powerful people in the world, and how heavily armed he was.
And amazingly, as I mentioned earlier, all in the same room at the same time. Shaima Khalil, thank you very much for bringing us up to date with that. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC. To the West African state of Mali now, because this weekend there have been attacks on the fringes of the capital Bamako and several other towns and cities. Now, this was carried out by an unlikely alliance which has brought together an Al-Qaeda-linked jihadist group and Tuareg pro-independence rebels. The targets, the military leadership that took over in a coup in 2020, and the Africa Corps. That is a Russian government-controlled paramilitary unit. It was basically created to replace the Wagner Group after the Wagner's withdrawal from Mali in 2025. Now, the defence minister has been killed in all of this, and there has been no news from President Goita since the attacks. We do have some clips from some of those involved. So first off, here's the spokesperson for the Tuareg pro-independence group. It's called the Front for the Liberation of Azawad. That's the name of the country they want. His name is Mohammed Maaloud Ramdan.
The situation today is relatively calm. This morning there was an exchange of fire with the group holed up inside the barracks of the former UN military base. However, after an agreement was reached with the Russians, they demanded the withdrawal of some of their snipers from within the city These snipers were subsequently removed, and an agreement was reached to ensure their safe and complete withdrawal from the area and the conflict.
And that spokesman did share a social media post which claimed to show trucks of Russian mercenaries, the Africa Corps now called, pulling out of Kidal with Tuareg fighters cheering and shouting Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar!
So that gives you an idea, and it sounds like the Tuareg rebels have taken Kidal, but then others say it is actually not clear what's happened there. Bram Postuhumus covers Mali for Deutsche Welle and other media outlets, a freelance independent journalist. What can he tell us about who is in control of what in Mali?
It seems to be the case that both in the capital Bamako and in the nearby garrison town of Kati, which is where the headquarters of the armed forces are, that those offensives have been repelled. But the picture is a bit different in places like Kidal and Gao, which are centers in the north and the east of the country, where there are claims and counterclaims, and it's not entirely clear who exactly is in control.
But we do know that the defence minister has been killed.
We do know indeed that the defense minister has been killed. We also know that the chief of staff of the armed forces, General Umar Jara, is either dead or severely wounded.
Have you got any information about the leader of the military government, Assimi Goïta? Because the defence minister, as you say, it seems is killed, but he's not been heard of since these attacks, has he?
And he still hasn't been heard of. General Assimi Goïta would be the first person to go and address the nation in its hour of need, if you like, and tell them everything is all right. But he has not been seen or heard. Now, we do know that the way in which the defense minister was killed was a huge explosion in the garrison town of Kati I talked earlier about, which is also where Goïta is. So it's not quite clear whether he is still alive, whether he was caught up in these combats or in these explosions, or whether he has just fled. We don't know.
So this is a major event. I mean, even if it's not clear exactly how successful these offensives have been, the fact is that this changes the politics of Mali, right?
It does. I mean, it shows up the failures of the junta, which keeps on claiming. I've just read a statement a couple of minutes ago to the effect that everything was supposedly under control, which sounds more like a desperate attempt to appease the population, which is quite anxious about what's actually going on up and down the country. But it shows up their weakness and their incompetence, quite frankly, to defend the country in the way an army should.
It seems unusual for Tuareg forces, basically fighting for independence, autonomy, to be in alliance with jihadi forces fighting for something completely different. How has that happened?
Well, if you go back to the origin of these two movements, they stem from the same community. Iyad Agali is a Tuareg who was once a fighter for independence for a Tuareg state and then turned jihadist and set up this movement GNIM, which is now fighting a jihad war. And on the other side, the FLA, the Front for the Liberation of Azawad, which is the name for the independent country that they want, are also from that same clan, the same Kidal area. So the lines are personal and the lines are intimate, and I don't think they've ever been severed, although ideologically you're quite right in saying that they are miles apart.
Does that mean going forward that they can stick together or that they can't?
Probably not. This is an alliance either of convenience, which was designed to give off a very strong signal to the junta in Bamako, or it's a joint effort that may be embedded in a broader effort, which we don't know the contours of, but which may include very, very influential individuals like Imam Mahmoud Dicko, who is a very powerful religious leader currently in exile in the Algerian capital, Algiers, because he fell out with the junta, which he first supported. So it's not quite clear how this is going to pan out right now.
There are forces, the paramilitary forces, which used to be Wagner, now Africa Corps, but basically, Russian-backed paramilitaries who effectively took over from the French. So, quite an important development. And they don't. I mean, have they fought or have they just, withdrawn?
There's very little evidence of them being involved in combat at all. If you cast your mind back to last year, they were in a battle with the Azawadian Liberation Army up in the north at the border with Algeria, and they lost upwards of 80 men in that battle because they were ambushed by what is now the FLA, and they have withdrawn. There was quite clearly a change in strategy on their part, and they haven't really left their bases, which are, among others, at the airport of Bamako, which was also attacked. And so there is no evidence that they've been actively involved in any of these combat missions.
It's interesting that when violent jihadis took over territory in Pakistan, in the Middle East, the Western world was involved in repelling them. Now it's happening in North and West Africa. No one seems that bothered. Am I wrong?
The West was there, but it wasn't terribly effective. You remember France was deeply involved in the Malian situation, and they had a relatively successful operation back in 2013 when they expelled these jihadists from large places like Timbuktu and even Gao, which is a huge city in the northeast of the country. But then they turned that into what people started to regard as a colonial or a neo-colonial occupation force called Barkhane, which the junta, now in power, kicked out. So in that sense, they brought in the Russians, so they didn't want to have anything to do with the West as concerns the fight against terrorism. Lately, though, there have been some tentative efforts at least bringing the Americans back on board, be it at a distance, but basically it's been the Russians taking over and the French pretty much washing their hands of the whole thing.
The analysis there of Bram Posthumus, who reports on Mali. The man taken into custody at the White House Correspondents Association dinner has been identified, as we've said, as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen. He comes from California, and that means the LA Times, the Los Angeles Times, has taken the lead on reporting about him. So what's known? Connor Sheets is with the LA Times. He actually lives in Torrance. That's the city Cole Thomas Allen is from. And it's within the LA metropolitan area. So I asked what he's been able to find out.
Yeah, so I've been out here in Torrance last night and much of today, and I've stopped by his house where, it's a much quieter scene than last night. Last night, the FBI was there till late in the night. I was there till 1 a.m. The street was still closed down. They weren't letting anyone enter. But there was over 100 people at the peak last night lined up behind the police tape at the end of each end of the street. And, just trying to get a look at this, this very unassuming house in a beautiful neighborhood in Torrance. It's like a beachside community in southwest LA County. It's just out of the ordinary for something like this to be happening. So just neighbors have been pretty shocked. I've spoken with a woman who was out walking her dog and said she waved to the family every day and really never knew them that well, but never had any inkling that this is going on.
Sure. And it seems that he was a teacher and his house looked pretty substantial.
Yeah, so we believe that the house was his parents' house, and he was living there with them. So he was actually not a teacher in the traditional sense. He was there was some rumors that he worked for Torrance Public Schools, but actually he was all reports that we're hearing are that he was actually a tutor at a tutoring company here in Torrance. I spoke with someone last night who works with high school students, some of whom have been tutored by him. They described him as highly intelligent, quote unquote, and said that he seemed to be, quote, proficient in a range of different subjects involved, including, biology, math, and other sciences. So that was his background professionally.
I think you've been down to the church. Was this the church where he attended? Did he attend church?
We're gathering bits and pieces here, but what we understand is that he attended this church. It's a very small congregation. They had a security guard that they hired, a burly guy who was kind of keeping the small group of reporters back. The church service is every Sunday at 10 a.m., so I got there a little after 10 and hung out till people left, the congregants left, and we were kept back from talking to anyone, but it was basically an unassuming red brick office park, just one unit, and it seemed to be where the church was. I've driven past there a million times and never noticed that there's a church at all.
And away from your reporting today in Torrance, what is becoming known about the motives for the attack?
The motive, we're hearing fairly little from what I can tell. So he's got this manifesto that Donald Trump has mentioned, and I think some others, and we're hearing little bits and pieces of it, I guess, but the manifesto has not been posted. The Attorney General has stated that they don't have any direct knowledge that there was ties to a specific Trump policy or the war in Iran or anything like that. but that they're still investigating. So I don't believe we know it's been less than 24 hours, so we don't really have a clear motive yet, but I think they're definitely working on that.
I've read that he attended the anti-Trump No Kings March, so I guess that would give us some idea of his politics.
Sure, and he donated, according to online campaign finance records, he donated $25 to Kamala Harris's campaign for president, and so that I guess gives a little more indication. But no, aside from the manifesto, which has not been released, there's not a long history of social media posts for or against any candidates or anything.
Yes, you'd expect lots more social media. He can't have had an account, or at least not one in his name, because we'd have heard about it by now. So basically, you're painting a picture of a very ordinary guy.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, that someone like this would be involved in something like this, and that it's a sign of how there's not always indications before someone does an act of violence like this. But he's the alleged shooter. We don't know exactly what happened, but it seems all signs seem to be pointing this direction.
And that was Connor Sheets, a reporter with the LA Times, speaking to me a couple of hours ago. If you're listening now, though, you're listening live. And should you ever find yourself in a situation where you've missed the programme, then the solution is the podcast. You can go onto any search engine, put BBC NewsHour podcast there, and you'll be able to get onto our pages, which give you highlights of the programmes and the programmes themselves. So that's the BBC NewsHour podcast, 2 times every day, and that's every day of the year. You're listening to the World Service of the BBC. And a reminder of the main news just now. President Trump has claimed the gunman who attempted to storm the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner last night was a sick guy who hated Christians. Here on NewsHour, we heard earlier from Oz Perlman, a mentalist or magician, who was standing right next to the president at the time.
So I was facing stage left. It just by chance, they tackled him right next to me facing stage right. So when we went down, I can't measure it, but about 1 foot apart from our faces. And I'm turned to the left, looking directly into his eyes for 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippis, pretty much thinking, I hope I'm not about to die, but also simultaneously, based on looking at his face, I wasn't sure if he had been shot.
And one headline, sporting history has been made at the London Marathon, with Kenya's Sebastian Sawe and Ethiopia's Yomif Kechelcha both achieving under 2 hours in time now. One of India's great photographers has died at the age of 83. He took pictures of world-famous people, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, and of those whose names have not gone down in history, victims of war, images of everyday life. So a broad range. And as anyone who's seen his pictures will attest, a really great eye. Renowned Bangladeshi photographer and activist Shahidul Alam knew him well and joined us earlier. What made Raghu Rai so good?
He was very unusual in the fact that he was a photographer who was equally at ease with colour and black and white. And really, the sensitivity with which he approached his work was pretty phenomenal. If you look at the subjects that he covered, I mean, he essentially was an encyclopedia of contemporary Indian history. He photographed Mother Teresa, Indira Gandhi, her assassination and its aftermath, the Bhopal tragedy, the emergency that she brought in, ordinary things, extraordinary things, and he was able to slip from one to the other with ease. And there was a tactile element in his work which is pretty special. I think he took you into the middle of the image. You were there. But for me, I think it was also the fact that he was not simply recording, he was witnessing. So a few images, for instance, the one of Indira Gandhi surrounded by her cabinet, it's an iconic image. But Raghu actually gets behind the Prime Minister, photographs her from the back. She's the only one sitting. You have these people surrounding her. Their body language, the symbolism within his images is so phenomenal. I've rarely seen politics and power depicted in such succinct terms by a photographer.
You mentioned at the beginning he could do colour and black and white, but just looking online at his work, I was struck by how much of it is black and white.
That's probably what you're looking at, because really he's very prolific. His book on, say, the Taj Mahal, for instance, and a lot of the contemporary work. I think it also has to do with the fact that he made a switch, because earlier on, yes, it was more black and white, but certainly after digital came along, he produced a lot of work on digital, and much of that was in color. And of course, he does do both, and does both very, very well.
Just tell us about his attitude to digital. I mean, some people like to stick with the old ways and stick with those very rich film colours and so on. Did he take that view, or was he going on his iPhone by the end?
I don't know about the iPhone as such, but certainly he took to digital without any problems at all. And he was passionate about it. He talked of the quality of the imagery, the fact that he could make these huge blow-ups and things like that. But to be fair, he also did, work on his craft. So it wasn't simply that he was taking digital photographs. He was working on his images as one would with a negative. Work with the tonality, ensuring that he got exactly the print quality that he needed. So he was very much a perfectionist in terms of extracting from the medium as much as he could.
I mean, it is the case now that virtually everything is pictured. Whatever the situation is, someone seems to have a digital phone nearby and to capture it. Do you think that means that a life like this is not going to be lived again, probably, because it's so much harder for a photographer? You can't be everywhere in the right place at the right time, and it's just harder for them to distinguish themselves from the mass of material out there.
I don't think so. I mean, I do recognize that, because of the ubiquitousness of the mobile phone and the fact that pretty much everyone is a photographer, there will be someone taking pictures of whatever's happening. But there is a difference between recording and witnessing. And a photographer who has that ability to see beyond what is merely in front of your eyes is always a photographer who will stand out, whose images will carry far more meaning than the bulk of imagery that we are inundated with. Having said that, I think it is very important that everyone has a camera, because there are moments when things will happen when the photographer will not be there, and they're recorded for posterity because there are people on site able to take those pictures. But the discerning photographer always has a space and is always able to bring something very special out of a situation which might be very ordinary for someone else.
And if people are listening to this online on their laptops maybe, and they can put a few words into a search engine, what photographs should they try and seek out to capture this man's work?
There are several of his books. I'm biased. Raghu Rai did a lot of work on Bangladesh and negatives which he'd lost for a long time and rediscovered. So his recent book on Bangladesh, The Price of Freedom, and then there is another version of it, which I think is very well produced. I've forgotten the name, but I'm sure they will find it. But Kolkata was one of his favorite cities, so he would go back, and there are wonderful images of Kolkata that Raghu has. His color work about the Taj Mahal is more of a coffee table book than his more journalistic work, but still stands out. And of course, I'm not sure if it's come out, but he was recently working on trees, and he was producing this wonderful imagery of trees. But I think Mother Teresa, Indira Gandhi are very special people that he was able to photograph in a way very few other people have done.
Okay, well, I'm going to, out of that long list, I'm going to go with the first one. Suggest people look up Raghu, Raghu, Rai, Bangladesh 1971, something like that. And that should take them to his images of that conflict, which were very, influential, weren't they? They went around the world.
Very, very important. And I think made such a difference to Bangladesh. It brought world attention to what was then a genocide. We did an interview of him for a book called and we did a video as well for a book called The Birth Pangs of a Nation. And there in one stage, he is talking about his son looking at one of the pictures, and the passion with which he talks about it is very special. And one of the things he says, I think applies as much today when he talks about generations will question you, the suffering you cause to others in war and terror. It was relevant in 1971. It is as relevant today.
And that was Shahidul Alam, the Bangladeshi photographer and activist, paying tribute to Raghu Rai and bringing us to an end of this edition of NewsHour. So thanks very much for listening. And from Owen Bennett-Jones here in London, goodbye.